the end. Let me introduce them to you here. I have Mukundha Madhavan, who is the APAC tech leader at DataStax. I have Jana Ramalingan, who is the co-founder, CTO, Discover AI. Sandeep Bhasin, Vice President of Software Engineering at Sabre Global Capability Center, and Twisha Kotecha, who is the Head of Strategic Innovations at Ishan Technologies. Now, before I go ahead and do with the housekeepings and the questions, I would request our panelists to please share a trivia about themselves. That if not this role today, what other role or hobby would you have been, loved to explore in your career currently? Mukunda, let's begin with you, please.
Sure. Thanks, Rikuti. I've been thinking about this for a while. I might have ended up in software. even
Okay.
I would have ended in software anyway. But even if I have to give a wild chance, I would
Mm-hmm.
probably put a teacher role.
Mm-hmm.
Teacher.
Okay. Jana, what is your thought on this?
think I would have ended up being a poet or something because I often feel that doing what I do, I don't,
Okay.
I'm not in touch with the intuitive aspects of life. So probably, why not poet?
Okay. Sandeep.
Sukriti, tough one. I don't know if being a golfer qualifies, Sukriti, especially if you're not very good at it.
Oh, why
Certainly wouldn't
not? I
have.
mean, why not? Why not? You have become a pro in what you're doing today. I'm sure had you been doing that, you would have become a pro. So that's not
Maybe,
out.
but yeah, certainly can't make a living out of it based on current form. But perhaps on a professional front, maybe a coach kind of a role, a consultant kind of a role, process, org design, org models, productivity, all of that interests me a lot. So maybe something in that direction.
Wonderful, interesting. Twisha.
So I think I would have been a pilot because traveling always fascinated me. So that's the role. I mean, probably in another next life, probably another universe.
Wonderful. So, as we kickstart this conversation with some interesting trivia coming in from our panelists today, before we begin, a little housekeeping for everybody. We'll have time for the Q&A audience, so please feel free to submit your questions in the chat. Once we're done with our conversation, we take them up in the end. Okay, now I will start up with the very first segment of our conversation today, which talks about the AI and code generation and how this entire year was a year of transformation for everybody. Mukunda 2024 has been a massive leap when it comes to AI-powered code generation tools. How has AI reshaped the way developers write, debug, or optimize the entire coding or software development? If I have to, ask.
Yeah. So let me start with the quote. This is from Andre Karpathy, right? He's one of the co-founder of OpenAI. I think he tweeted around last year, the hottest new programming language is English. That's true. I think with ChatGPT and the advancement of LLM and generative AI technology, right? I think anyone can code now, as long as you're able to describe the problem, right? I think we're going to see a lot of citizen developers building new apps and capabilities. Now, if you take a step back and look at what is code, what is code? Right? So it has two parts. One is the logic that solves a problem, logic to solve a problem, and the syntax. The syntax has been the biggest barrier for a lot of people. For example, I could be a Python developer. If I want to code in JavaScript, I have to learn the syntax before I can begin. Now, this is where this AI technology are really good at helping me with syntax. As long as I know what problem I'm trying solving for, as long as I can describe what logic I can solve for, you can get the code. So anyone can become a developer. So that's really cool. Now for experienced developers, I think the tools like Copilot, this is all about productivity, right? Now we always talk about people with tools versus people without tools. It's very similar, right? Developers with AI versus developers without AI. I think we are seeing a lot of productivity improvement in how developers will work, writing code, generating test cases, styling, all that stuff. In fact, at DataStax, all of us have access to Copilot. We even wrote a blog. So we are a company behind Cassandra. We added vector search as a feature to Cassandra. It took us only 6 weeks. We actually wrote a blog about how some of the GenAI technologies and Copilot helped us accelerate the development process and take it to production. So I think it's all about productivity. I think the AI tools are helping developers in every part of the life cycle in software development. So that's really cool. I'm hoping to see like more and more citizen developers building new capabilities. That will be really cool as well.
All right. So that was about the transformation when we talk of the entire coding development that has happened in today's time. Twisha, what ethical or practical challenges have emerged with its rapid adoption? Because as Mukunda mentioned about Gen AI being there and people are able to code so easily, you don't have to have a background in things. I'm sure everything comes with a set of challenges. So what are the ethical and practical challenges that you've seen in the industry so far?
Right. So as Mukunda rightly pointed out, AI is, revolutionizing the code generation, helping the developers, making their life simpler. But now it comes with its own set of significant challenges. If I talk about the ethical challenges, AI systems often reflect bias on the data that it has been trained on. And secondly, there are also concerns around the intellectual property. So there are unclear guidelines as to who owns the AI generated codes, which can often lead to legal disputes as well. And if I talk about the practical challenges, over reliance on AI generated code has also been an issue because it can undermine the core programming skills, decreasing, a developer's capability to solve complex problems or, their capacity to innovate in their own way. Uh, Apart from that, AI generated code also has hidden security flaws, which can be, exploited by an attacker, creating potential cybersecurity risk. So the key is to strike a balance, use AI as a tool to enhance human expertise and not replace it. So I think organizations must implement clear policies for responsible AI usage so that it can help the developer and not use it as a tool to replace a developer in an organization.
All right. Thank you for that, Tusha. I will now move to the next segment, which covers up the very important base, which is the programming languages for this year. Janar, can you just help us, with which programming languages have emerged as dominant players this year, and why do you think it has happened?
Yeah, thanks, everybody. So one of the things, like just like what Mukund said, definitely people are moving more and more towards no-code solutions, and that we've seen upward momentum. But then, if you look at the programming languages per se, Python has got the, continues to kind of rule the roost in the island, for obvious reasons. Great support for lots of AI libraries, be like has been traditionally so used by research scientists all over the world. And so though it has a lot of scaling problems, as people push it and try to scale it, we have seen that with OpenAI went through it for a bit, and every company goes through that scaling issues with Python, but Python still remains the crown leader of the AI space, and that's not going to change, I think, even in 2025. We also interestingly saw an upward tick by on C++ front, because people realized that the new C++ standard and what it brought in with respect to the constructs that it's brought in and how it has made it easier for people to code. I think C++ are kind of been for the lower level aspects of programming, right? Because if you write Python code, you probably are looking at C++ for writing more scalable code. So that's one of the upticks that we've seen as well. My sort of favorite programming language like Rust and Kotlin. Kotlin, I've seen a downward trend. Java continues to dominate. It's great because they've introduced new features, and also Rust is also kind of there's a good uptick on Rust as well. So the trends are actually kind of very aligned with how the AI has been developing and moving, and I expect that in 2025 as well we'll be seeing these trends in a very similar fashion.
All right. Thank you for that. Janar, Sandeep, all these, trends, all these aspects that Tusha, Mukunda, and Janar have covered so far, do you see these trends shaping the hiring decisions in the software engineering arena?
Absolutely, and I think the other panelists have kind of referred to how we code is changing, and when we are hiring, we have to factor that in. So let me start by saying that while being foundational, programming language is really at the bottom of the pyramid when we look at a developer, right? And exacting skills in it will become less critical with the advent of Gen AI assisted code generation tools, as panelists have also called out. I mean, in fact, they even allow you to learn new languages and move code from one language to another. So you can, even if you are well versed in one language, you can learn another language. See, when we hire, increasingly what we need is the high level skills of being able to do an elegant design, creating resilient, auto recurring systems which are secure, performant, and scalable. This is a tough skill to acquire, Smriti, right? And much in demand. And honestly, also allows the developers to differentiate themselves in this new age of AI, where some of us are feeling threatened by the advent of these new technologies, right? It's no longer about knowing the syntax and the language constructs. It's about how you can put it together to build these systems. And AI is still a step away from it. It will soon start doing some aspects of solution architecture and design. We fully expect that to happen as we go forward into the future. But at least as of now, those are the things we look for. Another key thing I want to call out when we hire is, we keep training our managers and other people who interview candidates is to not judge them for what target environment and expertise they're hiring for, because what's happening is require this new AI, ML, and they're very tough to pick from market. So our hiring cycles can become very long, and rather what we need to do is ensure that candidates who have experience from past version of what they've done, and are they able to abstract it and apply those patterns to the new problems, rather than judging them on the target language environment or on the target environment, because that's going to vary company by company and the technology keeps evolving, right? So that's what I would advise in terms of hiring.
Okay, now I would want to, touch base with one of the very important aspects for roles. I should just, quote as for the year 2024. Mukunda DevOps continues to evolve, and we have had heard about it so much this year. The kind of innovation that has happened, the process that entire adoption has changed the way the entire loop has worked for us in today's time. How have CI/CD pipelines, automation, or collaboration tools adapted to the modern demands?
Yeah, no, I think this is my favorite topic too. Uh, so I think the bottom line is, if there exists a runbook, it should be automated. It can be automated. It should be automated, right? And most of the task workflows are very well defined. I think most of the DevOps people are actually going to build agents and tools that will work with these agents to automate these runbooks. Now, this is also made easier with a lot of agent frameworks. Last month, Anthropic launched computer use models. So now Claude can run computer programs, access your computer, right? OpenAI is doing something similar. Last year, Salesforce launched XLAMP, a family of large action models. So all these are, I think, helping how we can automate some of this existing process and workflows. This seems to be very low-hanging fruit for a lot of GenAI applications. I think this is where I think we're going to see a lot of innovation and automation happen. The second part to that is, one is, yes, DevOps itself is, I think, going through this transformation on how a lot of this automation can happen. On the other hand, now we are starting to see a flood of new kind of applications, agents, tools, LLM powered applications. Like, nobody really knows how to run this in production, right? These are very new. Like, how do you set up LLM on premises? How are you going to run these agents? These are new kind of application. Like, for example, if you are trying to build a website, people will say, you know what, let's take a LAMP stack, run it, package it, deploy it. What do you do for an agent? There are new frameworks every day, right? I think these are some of the things the DevOps, the ecosystem is trying to figure out tools on how to best package them, deploy them, and scale them. And this is a common challenge across the industry, right? Like, I mean, obviously there are opinionated solutions from cloud providers like Vertex AI, Bedrock. NVIDIA also has this Nemo microservices for enterprises who wants to self-manage all of this, right? So this is where I think it gets interesting. Now you don't really have to solve all of these problems by yourself from scratch. You can adopt some of this application stack and start building on it. This is where concept like AI PaaS or opinionated PaaS comes into play, where you can actually start building on these foundations and run wherever you want. You want to run it on premises, self-managed, go for it. If you want to use the same stack, deploy it anywhere in the cloud, that gives you flexibility. So figuring out how to run this new kind of applications is one of the challenges people are trying to figure out, and this A PaaS like stacks are really helping developers to solve these problems.
Okay. So you also talked about low code, no code. Mukunda, you touched base a little about how it's actually aiding and helping developers with their tasks, really system, engineering tasks that happens to be in the system. Trisha, low code and no code platforms have been gaining momentum as everybody is speaking about it. Are these tools a traditional thread that we can look at when it comes to the developer standpoint in the long run, if I'm going to know?
Okay. So low code and no code platforms, let's say Microsoft Power Apps and Mendex are, I feel, empowering the citizen developers to build applications, with visual interfaces, pre-built components, and this is often without an extended programming language knowledge of these programming language. So rather than being a threat, I would consider these platforms are reshaping the developer's role. They provide tools to streamline, certain aspects of development by accelerating their routine workflows so that developers can allocate more time to high value custom development work. Despite the rise of low code and no code platforms, they cannot replace the skilled software engineers because now the complexity of the task is also evolving. And with the increasing complexity of software, uh, demand professional expertise. These platforms complement rather than compete with traditional developers, enhancing the productivity while also reaffirming the critical need of skilled developers in our industry.
Okay, Mukunda, I would like to know from you, how do you think these two coexist effectively? One of the things that Tusha, mentioned was, empowering and just making things easier for the developers. But what other aspects do you think, just eases out the coexistence for both the parties here?
Yeah, I think great point, Trisha. No, I think it has to coexist, like for all the right reasons what Trisha pointed out, right? Uh, so one is as a user, the choice becomes what is the fastest way for me to get the job done, right? It could be code, it could be low code, it could be no code. At the end of the day, it's about how fast I can do things. It's about agility for enterprises, right? Now, the way I think about, I mean, I've built some of the no-code applications in my career, few of them. So the way I think about this is no-code makes simple things simpler. Low-code allows you to do complex things possible. Like there is no way a no-code solution can cover the corpus of all use cases in the world, right? There will be a long tail that will not be possible to solve with no code. So every platform tool needs to allow a provision or a form factor for a low code or some customization or some bring your own code. So the way I see it, the tools, the next generation of tools, what you're going to see is going to feature a lot of no code, drag and drop stuff, click here, run. So it's going to make simple things super, super simple. You don't have to think. You can, so for example, I'll give you an example. Langflow is one of the new agent development frameworks in the market. You can actually build an agent application in 5 minutes. Just few clicks of a button, you will have a working agent. Right? But does it mean like you can build all kinds of agents with Langflow? No. You need some customization. You might need to bring in some code. These tools will offer a form factor for developers to bring in their own code. Okay, you know what? The standard tools, no code will work as is. Now you can augment that with your existing code. So in that sense, no code, low code will coexist, and every tool will have a form factor for both. We are going to see a lot of this no code percentage of form factor, no code being the front face of the tool, and there will be a low code solution to solve the long tail problems.
All right, thank you. I think that's a well-framed comprehension when it comes to the coexistence of both the things here that we have looked at in 2024. Jana, let's shift gears here to cybersecurity. With the rise of threats that we have seen this year, and having known that India is one of the most, when we call off the cyber threat attained country. India is considered to be in the list amongst the top places. With the rise in threats that we have seen this year and the past year, what has 2024 taught us about the role of developers in securing the applications?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sukriti. The thing is that with the again the elephant in the room is AI, right? See, with the advent of AI and our ability to kind of weaponize the AI in whichever way we could is what something we need to watch out for. Uh, and the reason why the threat of cybersecurity is much higher with AI is that AI is really good at figuring out vulnerabilities. If you see, right? I think it's been a bit like 4 years back. I remember Elon Musk tweeted that AI is really good at DDoS attacks because they are very good at regressive learning, extremely good at it. I mean, no human can actually even match that. So these are all established facts. So that's why I think 2025 is going to be very critical for cybersecurity. The way I think about it is that um, the fundamental the cybersecurity practice will be found short in 2025, and we'll be developing agents that will be guarding our system. So that's kind of where the whole industry will go. You can very easily see that if you see even the last couple of months and like maybe last 6 months or so, the number of vulnerabilities that we figured out, the 0-day vulnerabilities, that has been there in the code for a very long time. Like I think there are a couple of them in the Linux stack. There is 7Z. There's one more recently that came up. These have been around for quite some time, and I somehow attribute all of this to AI to be able to even figure this out, these kind of vulnerabilities, and be able to create prevention mechanisms for that. So to summarize, the vulnerabilities are going to get a lot more difficult to figure out, but we are going to improve over a period of time. You will see a small drop in the systems, the current system's ability to kind of guard against them, and then you will see a spike up as we adopt and using the Gen AI technology. That's how I see it.
Okay. So, Sandeep, Jana pointed out a couple of trends. Now, I would want to know from you what the trends and practices kind of have defined 2024 for us when it comes to cybersecurity.
Yeah, and Sukriti, just a heads up, I am seeing some network issues, so I may be breaking up a little bit here, but not sure what I can do. So please bear with me. The first thing I want to say before going into trends in cybersecurity is that Sukriti, cybersecurity itself is a trend now. For the longest of times, it was on the fringe of how we used to think about developing systems and securing systems. And it's very clear, starting 2023 into 24 and 25, it's a trend in itself that's going to continue for some time, especially with the advent of AI, ML, as Janar really called out. We are seeing more sophisticated attacks, more sophisticated phishing attacks, and the attackers have become more sophisticated, but the defenders can also use these tools to counter those attacks, and that's where the developer community need to keep pace. Now, before I go into some of the advanced topics, I think what is very important is the foundational pieces of a secure development lifecycle need to be in place in every organization. And I've seen real practical challenges in just enabling that. There are pressures like time to market, there are pressures like skill set, lack of understanding of knowledge of what it takes to produce a secure, resilient application. And it comes as an afterthought once an attack has happened and once a vulnerability has been exposed. And therefore, it is very important that the developers think about it upfront. Now, what do we mean by a secure development lifecycle? What we really mean is that we make technology choices, language choices. Is it a type-safe language? Is it a memory-safe language? Are we making vendor choices based on their track record with security? Do we have, during the design phase, threat modeling in place? Do we understand how to do threat modeling? Do we understand what threats are there in our ecosystem? Do we have static code analysis tools in place which are able to help us with understanding what are the security threats? Once we develop the system, do we have security testing practices in place? Now, I'm not advocating that every system needs to go through this, but certain critical systems which are going to be on the periphery of our networks are very, very important to secure against, and therefore you need to follow these practices. Now, my company gets in, we are a B2B player. we get in front of customers all the time. And in the last 3-4 years, we have seen a major shift where if you are not able to show how you are secure and resilient, you're not even in the race for, you're not even in the contention for the contract. So it's no longer a nice to do thing or a good to do thing. It is a major differentiator in the industry out there, right? So that's the first thing I would like to say. I think and then from an identity and access management practices perspective, the developers need to go beyond passwords into multi-factor authentication using passkeys, strong passwords, and all of these systems have been operating in a certain way and now require overhaul to counter these new threats. So there's going to be a spend, and enterprises are struggling with balancing spend between innovation and adopting AI ML and as well as securing their system. So this is going to continue to be an area that we need to watch out for in 2025 as well.
All right, thank you so much for that, Sandeep. I think you've outlined the entire trends and practices very well, like we were looking forward to. I would now like to move on to another very important practice and arena that we've looked up to as developers, which is open source. Janar, I would like to know from you that the open source movement remains central to the innovation here. But tell us more that about the contributions and the challenges that developers have witnessed from open source in 2024.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Sukriti. So one thing, like you said, the core of the open source movement has been very, very vibrant, even in the AI space. If you see the like in 2024 and probably many more years to come, open source is going to be at the core of innovation in many of these aspects, right? So if you look at specifically the areas related to AI and stuff, you see that there is a lot of movement towards. There are certain companies. We work in the legal tech space. One of the thing that our customers often ask when we go out and talk to them, saying that, hey, okay, what models do you integrate with? Are they open source, right? Because the way the data is being used for training the models is something that everybody is worried about. So there is naturally a shift towards models which not necessarily entirely open source. At least that's something that they can control, right? When I say and not necessarily entirely open source, I'm talking about some of the weights are not open source in some models and so on and so forth. So those are some of the key concerns that is there in the industry. But I see that there's a lot of major activity that has happened in 2024 towards making things better, starting from the core, which is I pretty much think Linux is one of the epitomes of open source things. To see what has happened there, how things have been adapted, the newer paradigms have been adapted, like Rust being adapted into the Linux subsystem, and coming all the way to AI, where there are technologies like what Mukund said, Langflow, LangGraph, and other things coming into the fore, where the innovation happens on there, especially around observability and stuff. I see a lot of innovation and growth happening in the AI space as well. So that's how I see that it is going to be dominant. It's going to be even more in the next few years, because we want to have a very diverse playing field, and open source ensures that.
All right, thank you for that, Janar. Mukunda, would you want to give us an highlight of how this entire open source can also be a threat at all?
Absolutely. I will talk about threats. But before I start, I love open source. Open source is great. Open source is great. I come from DataStax. We are built on open source foundation. This is a great topic. We can do like a separate webinar just on this particular topic, right? But I think there's a lot of power to open source, right? Like for example, Apache Cassandra is one of the best NoSQL database on the planet. This was started at Facebook. Like some bunch of engineers at Facebook built it to solve the scaling challenges of the database at that time. Now DataStax adopted it. We are selling to enterprises. Today, a lot of companies like Apple is contributing new features to the project. Companies like Netflix, Uber. So there's a vibrant community of developers who are contributing new features. That innovation cannot match. You cannot match that level of innovation. Same for Langflow, right? I keep repeating this because it's the newest one, and there are 35,000 developers in the ecosystem trying to figure out, trying to think about, hey, what problems we should solve in this project? How is it going to help me, right? That is the power of open source. the citizen developers, everyone trying to contribute and building stuff. At the same time, there is also challenges. Now, if you are not a contributor of the project, or if you don't know the know-how of what this works, let's say Ascent is a great project, a lot of people use it, but if you don't know how, I mean, there's an open source project, it's a great database, doesn't mean you can just take it and run it without knowing the internals. That'll be a risk, right? You might do some things wrong. I think it's not so bad. I mean, you should know what you're doing. And this is where companies like, I mean, for Linux, it's Red Hat, right? For a database, like for DataStax, like there are companies that provides enterprise distribution of open source software that comes with the support and security needed by enterprises, like compliance, PCI, HIPAA, whatever you need, right? So adopting open source foundation is critical for no vendor lock-in, run wherever you want. So all that benefits you get. At the same time, you need to either, if you're adopting it, you should really know what this project is about, how to run this, or get help from the companies who actually provide the dedicated support. So there are challenges, but there are ways of how we can tackle that.
I loved how you started this with a disclaimer that you love open source. I'm sure all the developers out there are with you in this, that they have a great substantiation when it comes to using open source for their tasks in the daily projects or working that everybody has. Now we've touched base with we almost all the important elements that we looked back in the year 2024. To start with, how the entire AI and code generation, was transforming the year, to programming language shift that we saw, low code, no code, the role of DevOps that we have seen, rising. From the very start of 2024 this year, cybersecurity, one of the major trends that this year we have seen, innovating, adoption, and everything that has changed in this space. How AI has been integrated with cybersecurity in order to write goals for the organizations, and of course, we've just concluded with the open source challenges and the kind of movement that developers have seen. Um, I would now want to move to the last segment, which gives a little prediction and a sneak peek into what developed when it comes to 2025 next year. So, of course, before we end this conversation and move to the Q&A and let people ask questions today, let's get a quick prediction from all of you about 2025 and how this is going to be for our developers out there who are listening today, joined as an audience. Mukunda, what do you think? What is your take? How does 2025 look for them?
Sure. I think I think 2024 was the year of production AI. People were like playing with AI, taking few applications to production. Just to give you some example, Physics Wala. I'm not sure. I'm sure many of you know Physics Wala. They are in the edtech space. They launched an AI tutor for their students, so students can learn, interact with this tutor to learn about complex topics, do assignments, and all this stuff. This is probably one of the largest production deployments of a GenAI application. It's available to millions of users. It's probably one of the largest GenAI deployments in India. And then there are several examples like this. SkyPoint is doing a healthcare specific co-pilot that is saving dozens of hours of doctors. But these are just scratching the surface. I think 2025 is going to be the year of transformative AI. We are going to see very transformational use cases. It's not going to be just chatbots. I mean, we have done enough chatbots in 2024. I think this is going to be the year of agents and transformative use cases. My prediction is, I think we are going to see the biggest transformation we are going to see is not from digital natives, but it's going to come from traditional large enterprises. I think that is where I think the power of GenAI is really going to show up in a much big way, where I think some of your bank apps can get exciting. All right, that's it for me. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mukunda. Jana, what is your take?
Yeah, I have some really bold predictions for 2025, especially for programmers. So, few things might happen in 2025, like most likely going to happen. Like back in my Yahoo days, I used to always there was a big effort to build things for human and keep the bots out. Now, 2025, we'll start seeing the bots, people writing things for the bot. You already see that momentum happening. Like for example, like with the introduction of Anthropic MCQ and other things, the action framework is coming into LLM, so which means that you need to have your services be interactable with the bot to be able to get the data and use it correctly and be charged for it, be billed for it correctly. So that's going to happen. And then there are a couple of problems that will get solved in the LLM world. Context length is going to increase. Obviously, I mean, this is just a no-brainer. It's going to increase, but how much it's going to increase, people vary. But I still feel that the constraints placed on us, our problem space, just because of the context length, is going to slowly vanish away. For, I would say, mostly 60% of the applications, context length will not be a problem anymore. That's my second one. The third one is slightly 50-50 prediction, which is like, we'll probably get better at solving alignment, but we'll continue to have hallucination problems. So there is a slightly, these two are tied. So the way you write programs are going to be dependent on much of that. You will still need to solve the hallucination problem at your level, and alignment is something that, the AI alignment is something that's going to take, that's going to be solved fundamentally to a better extent. I would say maybe 10 to 20% better than what we are in 2024. And then we're going to see smaller models. I even sometimes think that the smaller models are going to become more, kind of prevalent, that you will be deploying smaller models within your org, and then you'll be using it for most of your workflow that takes care of data security and a lot of other things. And then you go to bigger models when you need to have much bigger reasoning. That we already see that happening with GPT-4o models. You see that preview is actually a much bigger model, and then stuff like that. So those are the trends that I see happening in 2025.
Thank you, Jana, for that. Sandeep, what do you think will change, and what preview can you give us a sneak peek of?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Mukunda and I think Janar have already said. I come from, we consider ourselves a large company, and Mukunda was referring to how the Gen AI and the AI adoption in these companies is going to come to the fore. A lot of us have been sitting on the hype curve, so to say, because these technologies, when they start up, right, there's a lot of hype around it. And a lot of the use cases have been enterprise internal, whether it's developer productivity, whether it's technical support, chatbots. In 2025, I think you're going to see some really jazzy use cases, which are more external facing, come about. And I think the fellow panelists kind of referred to it. We are looking at a number of them. I think every application is going to embed AI and Gen AI inside it, right? It's going to start in 2025. It's obviously going to take some time. It's going to take, money is always going to be constrained. This means that there's going to be lesser money for current systems and development, and money is going to have to shift to achieving this goal of making our applications more intelligent. So the developers need to start thinking about that as well, in terms of how they are planning to upgrade their skill set and stay relevant, right? So that's where we see 2025 going.
Thank you, Sandeep. Twisha.
I think I'll add on as an extension to what Sandeep said. So with businesses going digital with a rapid pace, and with the rise of cyber attacks by 2025, I think cybersecurity skills will not just be essential but mandate for developers, especially with the adoption of DevSecOps principles. At the same time, sustainability will also be a major focus. So developers will also need to create energy efficient applications, consider the environmental impact of their work. So to stay competitive, developers will need to boost the cybersecurity skills and also adapt an eco-friendly design practice. So the future will require softwares that are not only there to protect data, but also support sustainability. So I think that's what's there in the coming years and starting from 2025.
Very important aspect you've dropped in,
Okay,
Trisha. A
yeah.
lot of IT firms have already started working on this aspect of sustainability, and of course, I'm sure this is going to be a mandate in the coming years for all the companies to work upon it, with the kind of damage that we have seen so far in the environment. Okay, now it's time for me to open the Q&A forum for our audience to ask questions. I have a question from Shubham. How DevOps will be affected by AI, and what new tools a DevOps engineer have to learn to thrive in the upcoming years? Mukunda, would you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. I think the primary focus is going to be around automation. So when you say automation, automation falls into several buckets, right? One is automating your day-to-day work, the deployment, running your infrastructure as a code. How do you take the software to production? Second is, I think we are going to see a bunch of automation in monitoring. I think the holy grail in monitoring is predicting a customer or catching a customer issue before it happens, right? Or knowing why, predicting the outage before that happens, right? I think the systems are going to get really smart at how to process this information. You're not going to see like the page duty alerts. Oh, okay, something failed, right? So you're going to get alert probably saying something's going to fail. Go look, right? So things like that. I think we are already starting to see some of the AI models on how they help with having this dynamic flows on like auto scaling, proactively taking down systems and spinning up new machines and all this stuff. So in terms of tooling, I think the existing tools, IaaS like Terraform, whatever you use, right, they are going to continue to evolve and start to be more provide AI side of things. When I say being smart, they're going to provide agent capabilities that people can start building those tasks. Describe what you need to do, right, in plain English instead of writing a YAML file or some Python code, right? So that's going to happen. Second is the main focus would be on the automation part. How can we automate? How can we get better observability and monitoring? So I think that those two I think are going to be a big focus on DevOps.
Thanks, Mukunda. Shubham, I hope you've got your answer as per Mukunda's suggestions here. I have another question from Archana. Can you please suggest and help me know how a web developer, can upskill oneself in the coming years? What is the best language or CMS one can use for ease and maximum profit? Chanar, Sandeep, Twisha, would you like to address this?
Yeah, I can take it. I think I would say that it's not so much about the languages, it's not so much about the frameworks, but you need to fundamentally think differently about how the way you have to code. You can pick and choose whichever frameworks that you want. There are like a bunch of good ones. Actually, there'll be more coming with AI. We have seen Next.js, momentum towards Next.js. We've seen momentum towards React. React had introduced new features. So all of these are great technologies to learn. But the question wouldn't be about what languages and what frameworks. It would be about how are you approaching your your productivity with these languages. That's what is going to be important. They're using, like pretty much Mukund pointed out and Sandeep pointed out earlier, using AI in a way which is very strategically placed to improve your productivity is how one should approach it. Most of the complex, the way I see it, at least in my organization, the way I see it is most of the complex pieces of the sophisticated piece of software, which generally are used to be very buggy, but when people write by hand, now no longer is the case. So just ensuring that you are actually identifying those pieces that are going to be a little bit sophisticated, complicated for you to kind of code from day one. You could take the help of AI and then you can iterate on top of it. But beware that it's not going to give you a completely working code from day one. One of the things that I always tell the developers, or even when I interview people, is that I no longer see the code that they generate is only one dimension of the overall thing. I see how well they interact with the code that AI generates, right? How do they debug it, right? Are they thinking about from the perspective of scalability, security, right? Are they thinking about from how does the code handle a vector, attack vector that comes through the input, right? Are they thinking about those aspects? Those becomes the key with AI in 2025. That would be my generic answer to this question. Pick and choose the technology that you want. There are very good ones out there. Everything will actually kind of thrive. But the approach to how you're going to solve the problem is going to change. That's what you need to watch out for.
I think if I may add, Sukriti, I think the way the user experiences the applications, especially the front ends, is gonna dramatically change. I'll give you an example. In our industry, we produce a lot of data, and then we produce a lot of charts. And then we require these analysts which need to look at the charts with data spanning sometimes years, look for anomalous data, look for patterns, correlate it with other data points, and try and make some conclusions and then take actions. And all of this is what we call a workflow. And if you look at some of the UI screens for workflows, they're going to undergo a major transformation with things like conversational analytics. Now, when I want to be action oriented when I open any application with the task that I need to do. I want to see conclusions. I want to see what needs to change. I want to just be able to approve it and say, yeah, this looks like a good change for these reasons, the reasons that you have mentioned, right? AI is going to fail at times, so it still requires a human touch. It still requires an analyst to be provided the tools, for example. So the developers need to think in non-traditional ways how the application interacts with the end user and take advantage of these technologies which we now have at our disposal.
All right,
So
thank you so
just
much, Sandeep.
one
Yes,
thing to
Trisha.
add upon that, at an overview, we can see that a developer's role is now upscaling with automated tasks being now given to AI. So now we see developer getting a wholesome role. You have a decision making power as well. You have to have problem solving skills as well. So these are the skills which are more important for a developer in the coming years rather than specifically knowing one language end to end. So repetitive tasks are now being allocated to AI. So now I think the role of a developer is more wholesome in the industry now. So that's what I.
Okay, I have another question from Aishwarya Mahajan. This is for a different profile. What are the challenges that will be faced by data analyst in the coming years, and what should one do to be ready in order to deal with all of them?
Did you say data analyst?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. I think I spent a lot of time with a lot of data analysts in my career. They always said they have the most challenging job ever. See, I think the way how okay, what changed with LLMs, right? If you really look at what LLM really brings to the table is, I think it understands it understands what you want to do. Like, you can ask a question, it really understands what it means. To some extent, it can reason. It's not trained for reasoning, but from what we are experiencing, it feels like it can sort of some sort of reason, and then it can start to generate stuff. Now, ability for us to apply the understanding, reasoning, generation capabilities of LLM to some of our tasks is what actually leading to this transformative experience that we think would happen soon. And this is also applicable in the analyst space. Now we are starting to see, I mean, typical role of data analyst, like they are sitting in this dark screen writing scripts or notebooks, trying to run this queries, waiting for the jobs to complete and all this stuff. Now, I think this is where some of the agent frameworks can help in a way, like you have tools like text to SQL, so you can describe what problems you're trying to solve for. It can generate the right query that you want to run. Like, you don't have to like figure out how to run this complex joins across multiple data sources. It simplifies a lot of reporting capabilities. Right now, like generative AI, there is this area we are calling generative BI. You bring those really large data sets, you can talk to it, it generates the BI reports that you want. So the amount of time you spent on like formulating like how to retrieve data from my system and how to present this data, that can be easily solved for. Now, you as an analyst, you only need to know what questions you need to ask. So I think you can spend the real value of analysts is asking the right questions. Now I think they can start spending more time on the more valuable part of the data analyst job, which is finding out the right question to ask for. And the tools here with the understanding, reasoning, and detection capabilities will help them do all the mundane tasks of writing queries, waiting for the data to come, preparing reports, all this stuff. I hope that answers, but others feel free to chime in.
So back.
And
Thanks.
go ahead,
One thing I
Janaki.
want to add. Thanks, Sandeep. So one thing I want to add is back my last company, me and my co-founder were working for ThoughtSpot. ThoughtSpot is a data analytics company. We have produced before LLM, we always thought that the feature was that to have um, no experience of SQL and use text as a primary interface for data analysis, right? And but then if you see in the last 3 years with LLM, that has completely been cemented. That is going to be the case. So which means that you will be doing text. You will be basically asking natural language questions, and the charts will be generated in no time. So that is a given, right? That and the second thing that I'm thinking, because I come from that application, that space. So the second thing that's going to happen in the space is that there is going to be a very um, co-piloty experience that's going to be built in this thing. So you no longer have to probably even be looking for certain, because if you're dealing with a whole lot of data, sometimes the hardest part of the thing is what questions to ask, not even like how to ask the question, what questions to ask. So because agentic flows, like Mukund said, is going to be at the center of things, you will already be able to figure out the anomalies in the data, the trends in the data, and be able to push it down, like to the user, saying that, hey, you asked this question, I do see the similar trend is evolving in this aspect, right? Or you asked a sales question, and I know that this is the recent spike in sales that's happening right now. So those all of these things which you have been wanting to do for quite some time, the analytics area is going to become a reality. So that's something we should be ready to embrace and to build on.
Yeah, and
I
Sukriti,
Yes, Sandeep.
I was just going to add on a lighter note that if anyone wants to assess how their application fares and they offer some business intelligence and data analytics capability, the test of it is, does the analyst prefer to take the data from you and then you use Excel or your application? And for the longest of times, we have tried to build very smart charts, graphs, and analytics only to learn that nobody was using it. And everybody wants your application to provide a data export so that they can then really run analysis on, on that data, right? So in this new world, we think we can finally overcome that hump, by the way, right? With everything that Mukunda and Janar just mentioned. We think we have reached a point where we can really solve their problem without them having to go somewhere else and do something else with that data.
Great observation.
Thank you, Sunil. That was a very valid point. Another question that I have is from Ashwin. What are the new tools and technologies that backend Java developers be aware of in 2025 for better productivity?
Copilot?
I have a
I mean,
question on that as well.
I'm not even joking, because you should definitely be having a Copilot running on your editor, whatever you use. It doesn't matter. I use IntelliJ. I've been a Java developer for a very long time, um, and yeah, I think definitely you should run some kind of a Copilot. I'm not saying you should. Everybody's style is different. As a developer, even within my team, I don't try not to tell them how exactly to do stuff. But you should have some Copilot running on your IDE to be able to validate and make the whole process easier for you. That would be my 2 cents. I don't know what others think.
Okay,
Sukriti,
I will now take up. Yes, Sandeep.
the other the other thing is, what we are realizing is when innovation happens, it's initially a bit uncontrolled, and different BUs in the company all start building similar things, and there is replication happening in multiple places. And at the beginning of the hype curve, it is needed, Sukriti, because you don't want to curb people's experiments with how to use a technology and how to evolve it.
Mhm.
But then you are at the risk of lack of productivity. For everybody is going very fast, but everybody is building the same thing, and companies have started to realize it. So when we speak about low code and no code, one way in which the enterprises want to handle it is build more platforms. So we are seeing this push towards building, let's say, an ML ops platform, a data ops platform, a Gen AI platform, on top of which then you build applications so that a lot of the services, security, DevOps aspects are taken care of for you, and then you can focus on solving the business problem. So sometimes we as developers don't like it because we want to get into the crux of the platform. So there will be the world of the platform developers and the application developers. And increasingly, as these technologies get mature, more enterprises will move towards a platform model.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a very, very pertinent question to both of you what you just talked about. This is a question from Radhakrishnan. Two challenges we face in adoption of Gen AI tools like Copilot are: one, security challenges in adopting Copilot and protecting the data. Second, developers are not keen on leverages Copilot by claiming it and is not really useful. How can we tackle these two challenges?
Yeah, the second one is much easier than the first one because um, the expectation is very important out of your Copilot tools, and these tools are evolving as well. It's very important to understand what gives you the most leverage, right? I myself have experimented with it, gone back and forth multiple times. Sometimes I completely switch off Copilot when I really need to focus, right? Or learn, right? I just completely switch off Copilot as well sometimes. But having said that, understanding which model works well for you and the limitations of it. I think the tendency to say that, hey, it is, uh, this is Copilot generated code and this is going to work, right, is completely wrong, right? It's like it's as true as it is for a human being, right, or even less true for a responsible human being. So it's very important that you continue to have the solid practice of testing, unit testing, integration testing, all the other things, including the security frameworks set in place, right? To deal with it in such a way that this is actually a very developing technology and there will be errors, right? I have myself been in my company, we have been at the wrong end of this by sometimes when, especially in Python, it's very easy to do. Some of you developers might kind of relate to this, is that because it's a runtime language, so it doesn't even do proper checks. So when the LLM hallucinates, and then when you don't have corresponding static code analyzer in place, corresponding test case in place, that's going to be a big issue for you. So you have to put those processes in place. That's very, very critical as a developer. You need to be very disciplined, especially with LLMs. Right. That's the answer to the second part of the question. The first part, I'll let someone else take it up.
Sandeep, Mukunda, Twisha, would you want to address that?
Just on the second part, slightly off script, but I think it's important that we recognize that productivity is not just about writing code. And in a development process, we must recognize, I'll give you an example, right? You can write a lot of code, then the requirements be changed on you by product management, and then rewrite a lot of code very fast. And then again in the fourth sprint, requirements change and rewrite code again very fast. The end result of it is still lower than whatever you expected by the end of that period. So I think it does not take away the need for having a holistic process of software development, right? Just expecting to have this tool and go faster is not going to work. You still need to have the rest of the discipline when it comes to software engineering.
Yeah, no, I think on the security front, the concerns around security, I think there the primary challenge in any, not just Copilot, in any generative AI application is relevance. Is your application giving you relevant answers? Relevant, right? It's grounded to the truth or the context. It's not hallucinating, right? And you'll be able to set up some set of guardrails. Like for example, like for your company, you could have like some certain coding style, certain libraries that you want to use, right? Things like that. So ability for you to specify or programmatically define this and measure this from your AI application is really key to get you confidence that hey, this is exactly what you want. You can go to ChatGPT, it has a disclaimer. Okay, this can produce wrong answers, like don't use it, right? But when you're trying to take this application to production, so there are techniques on how to measure relevance. What are the tests you need to run? Setting up a ground truth, doing racks like the metrics like rack checker metric that helps you measure how relevant your application is. Is it hallucinating? How much data, how much answer is actually coming from your ground truth versus LLM's own knowledge versus hallucination. So getting those metrics done and having them before you go to production is really key to have that confidence that hey, this is a tool that I can use for my production. Like when writing code, you're using it in production, right? You cannot guess, hey, this may sometimes fail. That's not good enough, right? So you need to have that relevant checks test in place before you take it to production. That's also applicable for Copilot, like use cases.
I just want to add one thing on the first question. If your major concern is with the data, the code security part of it, the data security part of it, I have had reasonable success running local OLAMA like models locally. That doesn't leave that allows you to run it within your VPC, and the data doesn't have to leave outside. Even those models actually create significant productivity gains. That has been my experiment. In fact, I kind of use almost open source models for. I don't use GitHub Copilot. Pretty much, I use open source models. They're pretty decent. You can also host them locally, so that's an advantage that you get.
Okay, I will take this one last question, for today, because in the interest of time, we might not be able to take rest of them. But this is on the hiring side of it. Pavitra has a question. She says, as a job seeker, I have seen there is already ATS that screens the resume, and the filtering happens at the surface level. Now, can you throw light on how AI is going to further influence the future of hiring or interviewing jobs in tech?
Uh, so from the
Go ahead, Trisha.
organization point of view, might filter out based on what exactly the organization is looking for. And if I think the question would be important mainly from an individual point of view. So if someone's looking for a job, what exactly they should do. So I think what would be important now would be to see if what you're looking for is aligning with what the organization is hiring at. Doing that check yourself, because wherever AI is implemented, wherever AI will influence is matching the supply and demand. So I think recognizing what skills you have, where it fits in exactly what the organization is looking for, and then going for a type of applying for jobs accordingly. So
I will echo
Okay, so
Sandeep's previous answer.
yes,
Sorry.
yes, Chandra,
Which
please.
is pretty much in the so AI helps in reducing the noise when we screen resumes. So that's one part of it. The second
Mm-hmm.
part of it is how does it change the hiring process as a hiring manager for me is that I no longer look for somebody who could rattle code faster. I'm looking for someone who's actually coding well from a software development perspective, which means that is he thinking about the edge cases? Is he thinking about how it's going to scale? Is he thinking about how to debug this code? Security aspects. So pretty much what some of the things that Sandeep mentioned, those are all very critical now in the hiring process because we know that eventually you will generate the right code. That's not my concern. My concern is how you're going to interact with it, how you're going to put these structures in place. That's my concern now. Hiring.
And by the way, Sukriti, from a hiring perspective, it's actually an exciting time for us. And the reason is interviewing is one of the toughest skills, and not everyone is good at it. And if AI can reach a point where it can match the job description to the person's profile, as well as access to the right questions to ask and assess from a first level screening perspective, and the jury is still out on it, right? This is this is still next year and beyond. I think I don't know if anybody's really doing it or using it, but I see excitement there in terms of, because many times we have this constant discussion with our talent acquisition team why this resume does not match this JD and why this does, and we're still not able to explain it well to them. So there are problems on the hiring side too, not just to be hired side, right? So hopefully, to Tusha's point, we can better connect the supply and demand using AI.
Thank you, Mukunda, Janar, Sandeep, and Twisha for an engaging and thought-provoking discussion today. I have had some amazing pointers coming in from all of you. Thank you, everyone, our audience, for joining us today. As we move into 2025, let's continue to innovate, collaborate, and shape the future of technology together. Have a great day, everybody. We have recorded this session. It'll be available on the webinar page in 24 hours. So in case if you've missed anything, any part of our conversation today, you can get back to it. Once again, our panelists, our guest speakers for today, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.